America taught you that Napoleon was a tiny little man, that Edison was a lone genius, and that Columbus was a hero. And every single one of those is complete garbage. And the man the whole country worshipped as a war hero personally caused the starvation of 3 million people. We found 25 leaders' history turned into superheroes, and the real stories are so much weirder and dumber than whatever they taught you in school. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you are going to want to throw out every history textbook you ever owned. Hit that subscribe button, because after this video, school is never going to hit the same way again. 1. George Washington supposedly rocked a set of wooden teeth like some colonial pirate. The real dentures were made from human teeth, and several came straight from enslaved people he owned. So the founding father everyone pictures gnawing on cherry wood was actually wearing teeth pulled from people who had zero say in the matter. No splinters were involved, but the real story is far more disturbing than the myth ever let on. Somehow, America turned this into a cute wooden joke for 2 centuries straight. 2. Abraham Lincoln gets remembered as the saintly man who woke up one day and decided to free every enslaved person out of pure moral goodness. But Lincoln publicly stated he had no intention of ending slavery wherever it already existed at the time. The Emancipation Proclamation was less a heroic awakening and more a calculated wartime move to weaken the Confederacy. It also helped shift international opinion firmly against the Southern cause during the war. So the man on the penny was playing wartime chess, while history quietly rewrote it as a heartfelt moral crusade. 3. Winston Churchill gets remembered as the noble protector who saved humanity from tyranny during the war. Yet during the Bengal famine, he blocked food shipments to a starving region under British rule. Roughly 3 million people died, while he reportedly blamed Indians for breeding too fast. The man history paints as Europe's savior was quietly engineering catastrophe somewhere else entirely. Statues get built for one half of a story, while the other half gets buried in footnotes nobody bothers reading in school. 4. Thomas Edison is taught as the lone genius who single-handedly invented the light bulb through raw brilliance. In truth, he purchased someone else's patent and only tweaked it slightly before claiming the glory. When Tesla's electrical system threatened his own business, he panicked hard. Edison spent years publicly electrocuting animals in front of crowds just to scare people away from Tesla's superior technology. So the man on the light bulb emoji was less a visionary inventor and more a ruthless businessman running a fear campaign. 5. Martin Luther King Jr. is remembered today as a hero universally adored by the entire nation while he was alive. Reality tells a very different story, since roughly 75% of Americans disapproved of him before his assassination. The FBI went as far as calling him the most dangerous man in America at the time. They even mailed him letters encouraging him to end his own life. The man, now honored with a national holiday, spent his final years being hunted by his own government. 6. Christopher Columbus is taught as the brave explorer who bravely discovered America against all odds. In reality, he never once set foot on North American soil during any of his voyages. He also believed the entire time that he had landed somewhere in Asia instead. Upon arrival, he immediately enslaved the people he encountered without hesitation or mercy. Eventually, his own government arrested him and shipped him back to Spain in chains for his brutal mismanagement. 7. John F. Kennedy is remembered as a devoted family man who focused entirely on running the country. Behind closed doors, he was juggling affairs with Marilyn Monroe and a 19-year-old White House intern. He was also involved with a mob boss's girlfriend and a suspected East German spy at the same time. All of this happened inside the White House while the Cold War sat at its most dangerous peak. So the polished family photos hid one of the messiest personal lives in presidential history. 8. Rosa Parks is often taught as a simple, tired woman who spontaneously refused to give up her seat. In truth, she was a trained civil rights strategist who had planned her act of defiance for months in advance. Movement leaders carefully crafted the tired seamstress narrative to make her seem harmless and non-threatening to white audiences. Her real courage came from calculated strategy rather than random exhaustion after a long day. History simplified a brilliant tactician into a passive symbol just to make her easier to swallow. 9. Mother Teresa is remembered as a saintly figure who ran compassionate missions dedicated to relieving human suffering. Investigations later revealed her clinics reused needles on dying patients and often withheld painkillers even from the terminally ill. Her order also accepted enormous donations from dictators and known fraudsters without much hesitation. Meanwhile, hundreds of millions of dollars sat quietly in offshore accounts far from public view. The image of pure charity hid an operation that was far messier than the halo suggested. 10. Alexander the Great is remembered as a self-made military genius who conquered the known world through pure talent. In reality, he inherited the most advanced army on Earth from his father Philip II. That same father was then conveniently assassinated right as Alexander rose to power. Mid-conquest, he also murdered his own best friend Clytus during a drunken rage at a dinner party. So the legendary genius built his empire on inherited power and questionable rage-filled decisions. 11. Davy Crockett is remembered for dying in a heroic last stand at the Alamo while fighting until his final breath. Multiple eyewitness accounts, including a Mexican officer's personal diary, tell a very different story. According to those records, Crockett actually surrendered and was captured alive during the battle. He was executed shortly after on direct orders from Santa Anna himself. The heroic death story was invented later by Americans who needed a cleaner and more inspiring legend to sell. 12. Ronald Reagan is remembered as the president who single-handedly won the Cold War through sheer strength and resolve. Behind the scenes, his administration secretly sold weapons to Iran, which was a designated enemy nation at the time. The profits were funneled to Nicaraguan rebels that Congress had explicitly banned him from funding. When questioned under oath, his administration lied about the entire operation to protect the story. It ended up becoming a scandal that was covered up more effectively than Watergate ever was. 13. Steve Jobs is remembered as a visionary product genius who deeply cared about the people around him. In reality, he routinely took ideas from Xerox PARC after being given a private behind-the-scenes tour. He also denied paternity of his own daughter for years despite being worth millions at the time. She lived on welfare while her biological father built one of the most valuable companies on Earth. A court eventually had to force a DNA test just to make him acknowledge she existed. 14. Neil Armstrong is remembered as the humble, modest hero who proudly spoke on behalf of all mankind. In truth, the weight of his own myth consumed him for the rest of his life. He spent decades refusing interviews and avoiding public attention almost entirely after returning from the moon. Eventually, he retreated into a quiet, reclusive life on a farm in Ohio. He once described his fame as something that had been done to him rather than something he ever wanted. 15. Florence Nightingale is remembered as a tireless battlefield nurse who saved lives through constant hands-on care. For the last 40 years of her life, she was actually completely bedridden while running her nursing empire through letters. She also actively worked to sabotage the reputation of rival nurse Mary Seacole. This happened despite Seacole having saved more lives on the very same battlefield during the same war. The gentle lamp-carrying image hid a woman capable of serious professional cruelty. 16. Theodore Roosevelt is remembered as a passionate conservationist who deeply loved and protected the natural world. After leaving office, he traveled to Africa and personally slaughtered over 11,000 animals in less than a year. The list included elephants, hippos, and white rhinos, all killed under the label of scientific research. He proudly posed for photographs beside nearly every single carcass collected on the trip. The man credited with saving America's forests left a very different legacy on another continent entirely. 17. Walt Disney is remembered as a wholesome family entertainer who deeply cared about the workers behind his empire. In reality, he served as a paid FBI informant who reported his own employees directly to J. Edgar Hoover. He also testified against fellow artists during the McCarthyism-era blacklist scandal. Beyond that, he helped destroy the careers of animators who dared to unionize inside his own studio. The cheerful family brand hid a far colder relationship with the people who built it. 18. Napoleon is remembered as a tiny, laughable little man, mocked endlessly for his supposedly short height. In truth, he stood at 5 feet 7 inches, which was actually taller than the average French soldier of his era. The short Napoleon myth originated from British wartime propaganda, spread through mocking political cartoons. It was specifically designed to make him look ridiculous to enemy nations during ongoing conflict. Somehow, Americans are still repeating this joke word for word 200 years later. 19. Henry Ford is remembered as a brilliant all-American entrepreneur who created countless jobs for hard-working families. What often gets left out is that he was personally admired by Adolf Hitler as a hero. Hitler kept Ford's portrait hanging in his office and cited Ford's anti-Semitic newspaper directly inside Mein Kampf. In 1938, Ford was even awarded the Grand Cross of the German Eagle. This happened after the Holocaust had already begun unfolding across Europe in horrifying fashion. 20. Nikola Tesla is remembered as a celebrated genius who died surrounded by the recognition America owed him. In reality, Tesla died alone and broke inside a New York hotel room back in 1943. The United States government immediately raided his room and seized every piece of his research. Those documents were then classified and kept hidden from the public for years afterward. Meanwhile, the man who had borrowed his ideas received statues and a national holiday in his name. 21. Albert Einstein is remembered as a poor student who supposedly failed math as a young kid in school. In reality, he had already mastered calculus by the age of 15 without much difficulty at all. The myth spread because biographers confused Swiss grading scales with American ones years later. In Switzerland, a score of 6 represented the highest possible grade rather than the lowest. Einstein reportedly laughed out loud once someone finally told him people actually believed this story. 22. Julius Caesar is remembered as a beloved champion of the people who was tragically betrayed by jealous rivals. In truth, he used his popularity to systematically dismantle a republic that had stood for 500 years. He declared himself dictator for life and was killed by senators desperately trying to save their democracy. The betrayal narrative was later invented by his successor Augustus to justify permanent one-man rule. So the tragic hero story was really just clever propaganda dressed up as history. 23. Andrew Carnegie is remembered as a generous self-made philanthropist who gave back generously to society. His fortune was built on the backs of workers enduring 12-hour days, 7 days a week, without safety protections. When workers went on strike at Homestead Steel, he hired 300 armed Pinkerton mercenaries to respond. 10 workers ended up dead as a direct result of that violent confrontation. He then used the very same profits to build libraries and polish his legacy for future generations. 24. Cleopatra is remembered as an exotic Egyptian beauty who supposedly looked like the actress Elizabeth Taylor. In reality, she was ethnically Greek and descended from Ptolemy, who once served as one of Alexander's generals. She was actually the first ruler in her entire dynasty to bother learning the Egyptian language at all. Ancient coins depict her with strong angular features, nothing like the glamorous Hollywood image most Americans grew up picturing. The real Cleopatra owed her power far more to intellect than to any legendary beauty. 25. The Founding Fathers are remembered as a united band of brothers who agreed on almost everything important. In reality, John Adams and Thomas Jefferson despised each other so much, they stopped speaking for 12 straight years. Alexander Hamilton wrote 51 anonymous articles mocking and attacking his own political colleagues. The clean, unified origin story was actually invented later by politicians who needed something simple to sell voters. So, the founding of America was far messier and pettier than the textbooks ever dared to admit. So there you have it. 25 so-called heroes who history quietly polished up while burying the messy truth underneath. Every statue hides a footnote, and every legend hides a receipt. If your entire childhood education just got roasted in one sitting, hit that subscribe button, because Liebuster is just getting started. Drop a comment telling me which one of these 25 shocked you the most. And before you go, check out the end screen because we are busting even more legendary lies right after this one.